So welcome to this session on podcasting at the XLI conference. I'm John Graves.
And I'm Terrell Patterson.
And I work in the MSSE program. Actually, we both do. I'm the lead faculty in the MSSE program and the Masters of Science and Science Education program at Montana State University. And Terrell, what do you teach?
I teach a boot camp statistics program for the MSSE program. I also teach a couple of field courses in the summer, in addition to teaching some Stat 216 courses here on campus.
Busy guy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good stuff. All right. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about podcasting. We both use it in our courses, in online courses, and so that's going to be the focus of at least the first part of this. And Terrell, how do you use podcasting with your students in your courses?
So for my kids, it depends on the course I'm teaching, but one of the easiest ways I use podcasting technology is that I will record a lecture in advance of having class time. And then the expectation is the student watches that, and so they're getting their primary instructional delivery from the lesson itself. And then when they come to class, they should be pretty well prepped to actually work through a lot of the hard parts, the sticking points that they get a lot of times when they work problems.
That's great. And that's really that flipping the classroom concept, right, where you take whatever lecture material that you're doing in the classroom, you remove it from the classroom itself so that when students are with you, you can focus more on what we call that active learning piece. So you can do the homework problems. If it's science class, you can do more hands-on investigations, those kinds of things. How long are most of your podcasts?
Well, a really good rule of thumb is 5 minutes or less on any sort of the podcast that I do. And the reason why is that when you chunk information like that, it's very easy for them to identify what's the muddiest point of that entire thing. And so they can pause you, they can rewind, they can start all over again. But that 5-minute chunk seems like a really good sort of timeline for instructional delivery.
Right. And we're seeing a lot of this taking place at the high school level. I do it with some homeschool kids that I teach, but we also do it with our graduate students at the university level, and it seems to work really well. And the students, I think, really appreciate the fact that we're taking the time to do that. They see us in a different light. You know, our personalities come through. Dogs are running through.
For good or for ill, you got dogs running around behind you.
It's great. It's good stuff. Okay, so what we're doing then is we essentially have a program that's doing screen capture. So everything that's on your computer screen shows up are being recorded, and then you have the ability to go back in and to manipulate that, do some editing. So some of those screen capture programs are Camtasia Studio and Camtasia Relay, and both of those have that ability to capture the screen, but my understanding is Relay is sort of the smaller version of that. You don't have quite the editing skills or ability that you do in Camtasia Studio.
Both a good thing and a bad thing. It lacks some sort of functionality, but it is much easier to use in terms of Camtasia Relay. So Camtasia Relay is literally something you can unbox and start using within a few minutes. And
here at MSU, we actually have a program that houses Camtasia Studio produced podcasts, and so we can then link those straight away to that server. And so that's one of the reasons we're using Camtasia Studio or Camtasia Relay here on campus. Now this podcast is actually being captured using ScreenFlow, which is a Mac product, and then I'll post this on YouTube rather than put it on our Camtasia server here on campus. Another thing is I'm actually driving a presentation behind this, and so our image, our audio is being captured and then placed on top of that image. I'm using Keynote, which is a Macintosh product, but you can use PowerPoint. If I wanted to go out to the internet, I could get out of this program, go to the internet, go to a web page. Anything that's on the screen is captured. And so I can manipulate that back and forth. But for the purposes of most of my podcasts, I tend to create a presentation and then use images, graphics on the presentation to drive what I'm talking about with my students. Now, Terrell, I know you do that a little differently.
I do. So much of what I'm responsible for is delivering math content online. And so what I use is a tablet type software. And the way that it works is that if you have any sort of very rudimentary paint style program on your computer where you can take your mouse and you can draw little pictures or little curly cues on your computer, you can turn that into essentially a whiteboard surface. And so using a tablet, you can write notes, and as they appear on your screen, your students will watch as the notes appear on the screen. And so it's a substitute for literally a whiteboard. whiteboard. And so a lot of what I do is, for example, I'll import a picture of a problem. So take a quick screenshot of a problem from an online textbook. I'll post that onto that whiteboard, and then in the extra space, the students get to watch me solve that problem.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so Terrell, mind talking to us a little bit and give us a demonstration with the tablet?
So one of the easiest, most accessible ways I use the tablet is the students get to watch me draw pictures and solve problems in the act. And so if we're doing a lesson on circles, for example, we can define a circle by a couple of things. So we've got the center of the circle, and then the distance to the edge is the radius, and then you've got the entire circumference around. And so you can come in and you can tell your students that, well, the circumference is 2 pi r, and then you can talk to your students about the area, that being pi r squared. And so the neat part is that the students get to watch, listen to you annotate essentially a lecture exclusively for their consumption. They can pause it, they can back it up, fast forward it. So this is a really accessible way to start using tablets.
It's great.
For lectures.
That's cool. And so what other products do you use behind the tablet? So I'm driving right now a Keynote. What do you use?
So what I use is a little bit fancier version of a paint style product, and that would be called Sketchbook Express. There's some really lovely software out there that's freeware, and so it can be downloaded and used. And so it's going to look much like this, where you can control the color of the background. You have a black background using a blue pen. I could use a white background with a green pen, but that really aggravates a lot of students for some reason. So I use blue a lot of the time. And so Sketchbook Express is just a freeware, really great, accessible program.
Cool.
To start using.
So aren't you glad I gave you a blue pen?
I am very glad you gave me a blue pen.
We did not even plan that.
Well,
no, we didn't.
Great minds think alike, and it's all John's mind.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, so now that we've gone through some of the background bit related to podcasts, Terrell, what do you see as sort of the positives, the negatives? What do we need to think about if we're an instructor doing this for the first time? What do we need to think about with our students? Anything that you haven't shared already?
Certainly, and so I'll start by some of, perhaps not negatives, but some things we really need to think about when we do this. The first is that you have to let the notion of perfection go. So for an instructor, obviously,
right now.
So for an instructor that first starts adopting this, there's the real tendency towards every time you make a mistake, so an English mistake or a mathematical mistake, that you need to back up, start everything over again, and all of a sudden you find that a 5-minute lecture is now taking you an hour and a half to actually get done.
Yeah.
But if you'll abandon the notion of being perfect, and if you'll admit to your mistakes on your screen capture, your screencast, you'll find that your students really respond to you making a mistake.
They do.
So not only do they learn from your mistake, but just the simple fact that you're up there, you're working, and you goofed it up.
Yeah.
I think they like it.
I think so too.
In fact, it humanizes me quite a bit.
In fact, one of the things that you can do with the screen capture programs, if they have the editing feature built in, you can actually put a text box on the screen and it can correct your mistake. I've done that where I've given the wrong word or the wrong vocabulary word, just throw up, oops, I meant to say, and just do a text that way. And that works really well.
It really does. It does. And just the notion of humanizing yourself, they respond to their instructor doing these video casts very differently than they do, say, for example, a third party. And some of the very excellent materials that are produced by Khan Academy, etc., are fantastic materials.
Great.
But you will find that sometimes your students will respond to seeing you, watching you, listening to you, all your bad jokes, all your mistakes, the dogs running behind you. Students really do respond to that human element of yourself.
That's really true. So in terms of tricks and tips, one of the things that I think is important for instructors to remember is the most difficult screencast you ever do is your first one.
Indeed.
And once you've got that one under your belt, and like you said, you're not worried about perfection, and you know that it's going to be you and all of your, professional glory and how you look on screen, it's just the way it's going to be. But in some of the research that I've done of working on an article related to both podcasts and webinars, one of the things that students report is they feel more connected to their instructor because they see that person as a human and they see the foibles and everything else that are going on there. That's so true.
Which in my case are extensive, but
yes, for all of us.
They see us.
It's so true. You bet. Can you think of any other things that people entering podcasting for the first time should probably keep in mind?
Keep it short.
Yep.
Elegant.
Unlike this one.
That's right. So we're setting bad examples everywhere we go.
Yeah.
But, keep it short. Keep it simple. Your students will really respond to a very parsimoniously chunked piece of information.
I would agree. You bet. And so I don't know if either of us have any final thoughts, but in a moment I'll turn this back over to the full audience, and we'll do the live piece after this. So hopefully people will have some ideas in terms of questions that they might have. And just to let you know, I do reference my images that I stole off the internet. So they are there if you're interested in those. But yeah, Terrell, anything else you can think of?
The one thing I'd like to say is that there's 100 different ways to do this right, and you need to adopt a methodology that works really well for you. So if you see something you like, if you watch somebody do something you like, steal, beg, borrow, but make it your own.
I totally agree. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
And I'll come back in and talk to the rest of you guys in the workshop right now.